I'm sorry, I can't pay. She stood alone at the ticket counter, no taller than the counter's ledge, clutching a wrinkled $5 bill in her hand. The man behind the glass didn't even look at her. Tickets $10.50. Come back when you got the rest, he muttered, jerking a thumb over his shoulder. Next. The child didn't move. Her lips trembled. The clerk leaned forward. Hey, I said move. She flinched. Then without warning, he opened the gate to the side and stormed out. In one swift, brutal motion, he grabbed her by the arm. Get out of here. This ain't a shelter, he barked. No, please, she cried, twisting under his grip. The man yanked her toward the door and with a heartless shove, tossed her out into the howling night. She landed with a sickening thud on the icy sidewalk just outside the glass doors. Her head bounced, but it was her ankle that took the worst of it, twisting hard against the concrete curb. She gasped, then whimpered, trying to sit up, her breath fogging the cold air. That was when Marcus Langford dropped his coffee. He had seen cruelty in courtrooms, in closed-door settlements, in silence. But this public disposal of a child, made the old fire in his chest roar to life. He was at her side in seconds. Sweetheart, don't move, he said, voice trembling with fury. He looked at her ankle already swelling, bruising fast. Where does it hurt? My foot. I think it twisted, the girl whispered. Marcus turned livid. Who threw her out, he demanded. The clerk, just stepping back into his booth, rolled his eyes. Didn't pay. Not my problem. Marcus stormed forward, slamming a palm on the counter. She's a child. You assaulted a child. She ain't yours, the clerk snapped, smirking. Tonight, she damn well is, Marcus growled. Call your manager, or better yet, call a lawyer. In fact, he pulled out a sleek black card and threw it onto the counter. Here, that's mine. Try me. If that moment stirred something in you, you're not alone. When Marcus stepped up and said, tonight, she damn well is, it wasn't just about one little girl. It was about all the times someone should have spoken up and didn't, but this time someone did. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And how did this scene make you feel? Drop a comment below and join the conversation, brought to you by BUP Stories. He returned to the girl, gently lifting her into his arms. She winced but didn't cry. He felt how light she was, far too light, like someone who hadn't had dinner in days. What's your name, honey? He asked. Maya, she whispered. Maya William. Well, Maya, you're with me now. Marcus carried her back inside, ignoring the gawkers, and placed her gently on one of the benches. From his coat, he pulled a thin emergency wrap, the kind he kept from his legal aid days, and placed it around her shoulders. He returned to the ticket booth. One child ticket to Montgomery, he said flatly. First train. Now. This time, the clerk didn't argue. The ticket slid under the glass with nervous speed. When Marcus sat down again beside Maya, she looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much. Why were you out here by yourself? He asked gently. Where's your family? They're gone, she said simply. I live with Mr. Buck. Mr. Buck? Maya hesitated, then said, he finds us jobs. Other kids, too. Cleaning houses. Sometimes we get to sleep inside. Other times, we just wait till morning. Marcus' heart clenched. He knew the name Buck Hargrove, a known con man in rural Alabama, never formally charged, but whispered about in every child welfare circle. The man exploited black orphans under the radar, feeding on a system that turned its eyes away. How long have you been with him? Since Mama died, she said. I owed him for taking me in. Marcus swallowed hard, rage simmering under his ribs. Not tonight, he thought. Not this child. Not again. He rose slowly, pulling out his phone. We're going to fix this, he murmured. You're not alone anymore, Maya. And for the first time in weeks, under the fluorescent glare of Union Station and the swirling snow outside, Maya didn't feel invisible. The emergency room at Grady Memorial wasn't busy at this hour, but the fluorescent lights still buzzed overhead with the kind of indifferent authority only hospitals could carry. Marcus sat stiff in the waiting chair, coat draped over his knees, eyes fixed on the closed triage door. Maya was inside getting her ankle x-rayed. Her breath had fogged the car window the whole ride here. Her voice quiet, polite, too polite, like someone used to being told to stay small. Marcus had seen that before. In courtrooms, in shelters, in the mirror. The nurse finally came out. "Mr. Langford?" she asked. He stood. "She has a mild sprain, not broken. We wrapped it, gave her something for the pain, and she should keep weight off it for a few days." "You're her?" Marcus hesitated. "I'm her legal advocate," he said, voice calm. "For now." The nurse nodded. "She's resting but awake. Room 4. Marcus stepped in. Maya lay curled on the padded exam bed, an oversized blanket over her. She looked up when he entered, not startled, but weary. "They said I'll be okay," she said. "You will be," Marcus replied, pulling the visitor's stool closer. "We'll find somewhere safe for you, not Mr. Buck. Somewhere real." Maya nodded slowly. "Then you don't have to do this." "I don't know you." "No, you don't," Marcus admitted. "But I know men like Buck Hargrove. And I know what it means when no one steps in." She turned her face to the window. "People look, but they don't see." The words cut deeper than she knew. Marcus looked down at his hands, thick, calloused, not from labor, but from years of battles in courtrooms where truth and outcome rarely shook hands. His last high-profile case had cost him everything. A wrongful death suit against a private prison corporation. He had the evidence, the testimony, even the press, but not the verdict. And he walked away that day, not just from the case, but from the profession. Disillusioned, ashamed. But tonight had stirred something. Outside, Atlanta slept beneath a silver blanket of snow. The city muffled and slow, but inside Marcus Langford, the storm was only just beginning. He stood. "You hungry?" Maya blinked. "A little." He stepped out, bought 2 chicken sandwiches and a bottle of orange juice from the vending lounge, and returned. Maya sat up slowly, grateful, but quiet as she took the food. "Between bites," she asked, "are you really a lawyer?" "Used to be," he said. "Now I mostly make trouble for bad people who think they're untouchable." She studied him for a moment, then asked something unexpected. "Were you a good one?" Marcus paused. "I tried. Didn't always win." She nodded, chewing slowly. When the nurse returned with discharge papers, Marcus signed as temporary guardian. The nurse didn't question it. She saw what most trained eyes could see. The bruising on Maya's wrists. The malnourishment. The way she flinched when anyone moved too quickly. Abuse had a smell, a shape. Anicho. They stepped out into the bitter cold. Marcus helped Maya into the front seat of his car, wrapped in a fresh coat he brought from the donation closet. "Where are we going?" she asked. "A place with heat," Marcus said. "And people who won't put you to work like a servant." She stared out the window. "Will he find me?" Marcus looked at her, jaw tightening. "Not if I find him first." They drove in silence, the city slipping by in quiet bursts of neon and sodium light. Marcus's mind moved faster than the car, ticking through everything he remembered about Buck Hargrove, how he'd exploited the loopholes in Georgia's foster system, how he'd operated out of group homes not registered with the state. Kids fell through cracks and predators like Buck built their empires in those gaps. But Marcus wasn't just angry for Maya. He was angry for every child like her. For every file he'd ever closed too late. By the time they arrived at his condo, Maya had dozed off. He carried her in gently, placed her on the couch, and draped a blanket over her. On the shelf nearby was a framed photograph, dusty, nearly forgotten. A black woman in her 30s, radiant, standing beside a young Marcus in a courthouse hallway. Loretta William, the woman he had failed. He hadn't thought about her in years, but now the name clicked. William didn't feel brave. He felt tired. But tired or not, they were winning. By 2:45 p.m., the courtroom was packed. Maya sat between Sylvia and Sister Claudette, clutching her stuffed bear in one hand, a small token of comfort in a room full of tension. Marcus sat with Ben and Carla, their shoulders squared, their expressions unblinking. Across the aisle, Dayton sat still, jaw tight, his lawyers murmuring quietly. Judge Parks entered, robe swaying like a dark banner, her face unreadable. She took her seat and looked across the courtroom with that same fierce calm that had made her both revered and feared in the legal world. I have reviewed the testimony, the evidence, and the public record, she began, her voice clear. And I find that Harold Dayton knowingly ignored credible reports of abuse under his oversight, took actions to suppress whistleblowers, and financially benefited from the continued exploitation of minors placed in contracted homes. A gasp rippled through the room. I am referring this case to the grand jury with the recommendation of indictment on charges including obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit child endangerment, and reckless endangerment under Georgia state law. Dayton didn't flinch, but his skin turned ashen. One of his lawyers began to speak, but the judge cut him off. This is not a time for argument. This is a time for accountability. Maya leaned against Sylvia's shoulder, her small frame trembling. Sylvia wrapped an arm around her, whispering something that Marcus couldn't hear, but felt across the room like a prayer. Outside, the courthouse erupted. Protesters cheered. Reporters scrambled for statements. Camera crews shouted over one another, and for the first time, the chant that had once only echoed in backstreets and community halls was being picked up by strangers. Justice for Loretta. Justice for Maya. Justice for all. Marcus stepped out into the sunlight, the rain having finally cleared. He saw Jamal standing by the curb, eyes wet but proud. We got one, Jamal said. Not all of them yet, Marcus replied. But yeah, we got one. That night, the community gathered at the mural again. Flowers lined the base. Someone had added lights to illuminate it in the dark. On the wall, Maya's likeness stood taller than ever, surrounded now by other children, names written in golden paint, hands reaching upward. A makeshift stage had been set. Sister Claudette gave the invocation. Ben read a letter from a survivor in Texas. Carla spoke about changing laws. Then Maya stepped up. The crowd hushed. Even the breeze seemed to still. I didn't think people would believe me, she began. But they did. And then they believed each other, and that made us strong. She took a deep breath. But there are still kids who don't have anyone. Kids who are scared. So we have to keep fighting until none of them are left behind. Someone began clapping. Then more. And soon the street was thunderous with applause. Later, as the crowd began to thin and the lights dimmed, Marcus stood beside Maya, looking up at her painted image. You did that, he said. She smiled. We did. Then she looked up at him, her voice soft. Do you think Mama knows? Marcus nodded. I think she's been watching the whole time. And for the first time since the night at the train station, Maya let herself smile, not out of survival, but out of peace. The war wasn't over. But this battle, at least, had found its victory. Days after the ruling against Harold Dayton, a strange calm settled over the city. But Marcus knew it wasn't the peace of justice fully served. It was the quiet before another storm. The system was still bruised, still twitching from the exposure, and predators, like old shadows, had a way of finding new corners. At the shelter, Maya had started drawing again. Her pictures no longer carried only sorrow. They had color now: trees, blue skies, stars. In one, she drew a house with large windows and a porch swing. And in the top corner, a woman's figure with curly hair waving. Sylvia hung it beside the chapel door with quiet reverence. Marcus spent the next few days reviewing closed case files. Something about the ease with which Buck had operated for so long gnawed at him. There had to be more: other networks, other homes. As he combed through the archive, one name reappeared again and again. Elmbrook Youth Transitional Center. It had been mentioned in at least 6 placement reports. Children transferred there before disappearing into the system. No documentation, no follow-up. A digital ghost. Ben stopped by his office that afternoon, holding a thumb drive. "You'll want to see this," he said. On it were clips from old county budget meetings, public records, never aired, never reviewed closely. In one grainy video, Harold Dayton sat next to a man named Louis Trammell, a private contractor with ties to youth rehabilitation. Trammell wasn't flashy, but his name appeared in the funding notes for Elmbrook. "I ran his financials," Ben said. "Shell companies, offshore accounts, and guess who signed 3 of his earliest funding approvals?" Marcus' jaw clenched. "Dayton." Ben nodded. "This runs deeper." That night, Marcus met Carla in her office where she'd begun compiling a secondary case file. "Elmbrook closed officially in 2015, she said, pointing to a report. But the land was never sold. No demolition, no conversion, just closed. Like a tomb." Marcus muttered, "We need a warrant to search the premises." Carla added, "But if we wait for the court, we don't have time to wait," Marcus said. "If there are still kids being moved through there, she didn't need convincing. You'll need backup. I'll take Jamal." The next day, under gray skies and the cloak of early morning, Marcus and Jamal drove out toward the old Elmbrook property. It sat just outside the city limits, hidden behind a thicket of overgrown pine and rusted fencing. From the outside, the building looked long abandoned, windows cracked, weeds overtaking the stone path. But as Marcus stepped closer, he noticed a detail too fresh. Tire tracks in the mud. Jamal drew his jacket tighter. "This place stinks of something." They circled the structure, flashlights in hand. On the far side, Marcus found a door with a newer lock, silver, untouched by rust. He bent down, inspecting the frame. This was replaced recently. Jamal kept watch while Marcus picked the lock. It gave with a click. Inside, the air was stale, but not entirely dusty. Recent footprints marred the floor. Empty bunks lined the walls, and in one room, makeshift filing cabinets sat in a corner. Marcus opened one. Intake logs, names, ages. Nadachi's. Jamal opened a metal closet and froze. "Marcus." Inside were stacks of tattered clothing. Some child-sized, some adult, all tagged with numbers, not names. Marcus stared. They didn't just hide kids here. They moved them, disguised them, buried their identities. Just then, a faint noise echoed from down the hall. A door creaking, a voice faint, muffled. Marcus and Jamal moved silently, weapons drawn. They turned a corner and found a teenage girl, no older than 15, standing barefoot with a blanket clutched around her shoulders. Her eyes widened in terror. "It's okay," Marcus said quickly, lowering his flashlight. "We're here to help." Behind her, 3 more children emerged, silent, cautious. 2 boys and another girl all looked malnourished, frightened. "They said someone would come," the first girl whispered. "Who said that?" Marcus asked gently. She pointed toward the back of the building. "The woman who used to work in the kitchen. She stayed behind when the others left." They led the children outside into the morning light. Jamal radioed Carla. Within 15 minutes, law enforcement and medics arrived. The children were checked, warmed, fed. Marcus stood aside, watching it unfold, heart pounding. He had suspected corruption. But this was a second ring, a place Dayton hadn't just overlooked, but had allowed to function in the shadows. When Carla arrived, she surveyed the site with fury in her eyes. "We shut down one monster," she said. "Now we know there were more." "We need a task force," Marcus replied. "Federal independent oversight. Pull every funding ledger from 2000 to now." "You think there are more Elmbrooks?" Marcus stared at the tire tracks, the hidden closets, the children who still hadn't spoken a word. "I think we've only scratched the surface." That evening, Marcus returned to St. Jude's, exhausted, but resolute. Maya met him at the door, hugging him tight without a word. Sister Claudette lit a candle for the new children and for the ones they still hadn't found. Sylvia brought out tea, her hands steady now, no longer shaking. "They're starting to listen," she said. Marcus looked at her. "Good, because we're not done speaking." Above them, the mural glowed in the lamplight. Beneath it, a new name had been added. A promise etched into paint: "Elman's here." The morning light slanted through the chapel's stained glass, painting long streaks of amber and rose across the stone floor. Maya sat on the front pew with a pencil in hand, scribbling into a notebook. Across the room, Sister Claudette gently dusted the hymnals, her hands steady, but her eyes watchful. There was a tension in the air, not fear exactly, but anticipation. Like the moment before a long-held breath is finally released. At City Hall, Marcus stood behind a podium, facing a wall of microphones and a sea of flashing lights. Carla stood beside him, her expression fierce and composed. This press conference hadn't been planned. It was born out of necessity.